In the heart of a fog-shrouded town, there stood an old abandoned theater known as the Echo Playhouse. Legend had it that anyone who entered was forced to face their deepest fears in the form of vivid, horrifying visions that felt all too real. Despite numerous warnings, a curious group of thrill-seeking friends decided to challenge the myths and spend the night inside the theater to see if they could survive these horror stories. The friends were Jake, a skeptic who laughed at local superstitions, Marla, who loved all things paranormal, and Ethan, who was always up for an adventure. They arrived just as the sun set, their flashlights piercing the thickening fog. The front doors of the theater creaked ominously as they pushed them open, stepping into a lobby draped in cobwebs and dust. As they explored the dimly lit hallways lined with faded movie posters, Marley felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Guys, did you hear that?" she whispered, stopping in her tracks. A soft, melancholic tune floated through the air, a piano playing from somewhere deep within the theater. Jake chuckled. "It's probably just the wind. Old buildings make weird noises."
Ignoring Jake's dismissals, the trio followed the sound to the main auditorium. The music grew louder, guiding them to their seats in the dusty front row. As they sat, the music abruptly stopped, replaced by a deafening silence that seemed to throb in their ears. Suddenly, the stage curtains rustled and slowly drew back, revealing nothing but an empty stage with a single spotlight shining down. "Welcome!" a voice boomed from the shadows, deep and resonant. The friends jumped, looking around for the source, but saw no one. "Tonight, you will each face your own horrors. Can you survive these stories?" the voice challenged, filling the auditorium with its eerie
The spotlight
power.
flickered and then split into three, each beam moving to illuminate a door on the stage that hadn't been there before. "Choose your door," the voice commanded. "Your personal horrors await." Jake, determined to prove there was nothing to fear, chose the door on the left. Marla, drawn by her curiosity about the supernatural, went to the door in the middle. Ethan, hesitant but not wanting to appear frightened, walked towards the door on the right. As they each stepped through their chosen doors, the doors slammed shut behind them, plunging them into scenarios crafted from their deepest fears. Jake found himself in an endless corridor, doors lining each side, screams echoing from behind each one as he tried to find an exit. Marla was transported to a Victorian seance room, where the ghostly participants turned their hollow eyes upon her, whispering secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Ethan entered a room that resembled the inside of a clock, gears and cogs spinning wildly around him, the ticking growing louder until it was nearly maddening. Marla, in the Victorian seance room, sat frozen as the ghostly figures around her began to materialize more clearly. Their faces, once blurred and indistinct, now sharpened into gaunt, spectral visages. They reached out to her, their cold, transparent fingers brushing against her skin as they whispered prophecies of doom and despair. The air around her grew colder, and the candles flickered as if struggling to maintain their light against a suffocating darkness. Meanwhile, Ethan, trapped inside the clockwork room, felt the pressure mounting as the ticking grew louder. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the gears and cogs began to spin faster. He dodged swinging pendulums and ducked under rapidly moving parts, his heart pounding in his chest. With every tick of the clock, his surroundings seemed to become more chaotic, a physical manifestation of his rising panic. Back on the stage, the spotlight suddenly split again, this time illuminating the three doors and the empty seats in the auditorium. The voice returned, louder and more commanding than before. "Their trials are not yet over," it boomed throughout the space. "Their fears deepen, their resolves are tested. But are they strong enough to confront what lies at the heart of their nightmares?"
As the voice echoed, the doors slammed shut once more, a loud clack resounding like a gunshot in the quiet theater. Behind each door, the environments reacted. The corridors behind Jake began to shift, the walls slowly closing in as if to compress the space into nothingness. In Marla's seance room, the ghostly figures started circling closer, their faces contorting in torment as they reached for her, pulling her into their world of perpetual sorrow. In the clockwork room, the machinery accelerated, gears now whirring at a dizzying pace, the noise overwhelming Ethan's senses. Suddenly, A new sound pierced the night, a high-pitched, desperate scream that seemed to come from somewhere deep within the theater. It was unclear if it belonged to Jake, Marla, Ethan, or another lost soul entirely. The scream echoed, hanging in the air, a haunting reminder of the theater's dark history and the new chapter of horror that was still unfolding within its walls.
As the scream faded, the spotlight dimmed. Flickering as if struggling against an unseen force, the stage set for the next horrifying act in the Echo Playhouse. The voice, now just a whisper, taunted, "Can you survive what comes next?" The question lingered, unanswered, as the darkness seemed to grow thicker, swallowing the little light left on the stage. As the tension in the Echo Playhouse reached a crescendo, the friends, Jake, Marla, and Ethan, found themselves pushed to the limits of their endurance. Despite the terror and disorientation, a spark of resolve ignited within each of them, a refusal to be overwhelmed by their fears. In the corridor of endless doors, Jake's panic turned to determination. He realized that the screams behind each door mirrored his own fears, and he began to confront them one by one. As he opened each door, instead of turning away from the screams, he stepped inside, facing the source of each fear head-on. Surprisingly, with each confrontation, the corridors began to shorten. The screams grew less intense, and doors started to vanish until only one door remained. It led back to the main auditorium, a symbol of his conquered
Marla,
fears.
surrounded by the ghostly figures in the seance room, found her fear replaced by compassion. She listened to the whispers, understanding that these spirits were not malevolent, they were lost, seeking acknowledgement and release. Speaking words of peace and offering reassurances, she watched as one by one the spirits faded away, their faces easing into expressions of relief. The cold that had pervaded the room warmed, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, allowing her to find her way back to the stage. Ethan, amidst the chaos of the clockwork room, realized that the escalating noise and danger reflected his own rising panic. He took a deep breath, centering himself amidst the madness, and began moving deliberately through the room. He visualized the machinery slowing, applying his focus and calm to each movement. Gradually, the ticking and whirring subsided, the gears slowed, and the room's motion synchronized into a rhythmic, almost melodic pattern, opening a path for him to exit. Reunited on the stage, the trio saw the spotlight converge upon them once more, but this time it felt warm and inviting. The ominous voice, now softer, almost appreciative, spoke again. "You have faced your fears, and you have survived. But remember, true courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery over it."
With those words, the theater seemed to exhale, the heavy air lifting and the oppressive energy dissipating. The doors of the theater swung open, revealing the first light of dawn. As they walked out of the Echo Playhouse, the friends felt a weight lifted from their shoulders. The experiences of the night had changed them, each confrontation with their fears strengthening their spirits. Back outside, the town was waking up, oblivious to the night's trials. The friends looked back at the theater, no longer an ominous relic, but a place where they had each grown stronger. They knew they would carry these lessons with them, a reminder that they could face the darkest of fears and emerge victorious. As they walked away, the Echo Playhouse stood silent, its role as a crucible of fear and growth fulfilled, waiting for the next brave souls seeking to test their mettle against their deepest fears.